Welcome to Conscious Conversations. I am Ariana.
And I'm Cami. It's in our hearts to expand your mind and reality
and elevate the consciousness of the world.
One conversation at a time. Hello and welcome to Conscious Conversations with Ariana and Cami. How are you doing today, Ariana?
So we're here to talk about parasites, dark entities, and narcissists and how they all intertwine and all of the beautiful energies that my 4 planets in Scorpio just love to attend to. Yay.
Yay. I'm feeling that. My goodness. Yeah, we're going to see where this conversation goes because we know for a fact that parasites are a thing. I'm sure that you've done some cleanses and have had some really, really interesting experiences with how your body responds to that. And you've definitely done plenty of entity work. We've both definitely had our encounters with narcissists, and I'm anxious to see where this conversation goes because we've been dancing around this one for a minute, and I felt like, yeah, I agree with you. Let's go ahead and let's tackle this subject.
Excuse me. So, here we are.
Here we are.
Parasites.
I'm feeling like you may be in the middle of experiencing the effects of some of that as we do our clearings in our various ways and whatever, we have a die off. So we have the physical parasites in the body, and they have weird effects on us in that they tend to siphon our energy. In my experience, they can also create looping and negative thought patterns. Mm-hmm. They can create emotional disturbances. They can affect the hormones. I don't know that I have a lot of scientific basis to point at for all of this stuff. Although I know that there are a lot of studies out there on the different ways that parasites can affect us. These are just the things that I have observed in my workings with myself and with others. And the entities, the unseen, tend to act
the same thing.
What's that?
They tend to do the same thing, siphon off our energies, affect our moods, cause us to loop in negative thought patterns. Isn't it interesting?
It is. I know that I went through some involvement with different groups and things where we got very adept at identifying different collectives in the ways that they behave and their sort of qualities and frequency signatures, right? So we could recognize what we were dealing with when we were dealing with these things in other people and in ourselves, right? Identifying them and pulling them out or dealing with them in whatever way. And then I experienced Jerry Sargent with Star Magic Healing, and he dealt with them in a totally different way. And so basically he qualifies them all as parasites. He calls them all parasites. He said, read the book Parasites. You will see how parasites function in the body, the physical parasites, and you will also recognize that these energetic parasites act exactly the same way and have exactly the same effects. So don't give them the attention by labeling them or, getting into sorting them or categorizing them or whatever. They're all parasites. You deal with them essentially all the same way. So I know that you and I have talked about this before. You deal a lot more with this than I do. It's not my favorite work. You love it. I am definitely open to switching my mindset on that, but you have found that offering them love seems to be one of the more effective ways of getting them to separate from whoever it is that you're working with, to get them to release and let go and go off to where they belong. You'd mentioned that before, so correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. I don't recall that.
Oh.
So
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
I don't recall that at all.
Okay.
I wouldn't discount it as a possibility, but for whatever reason, my mind is not going there at the moment. And I think what I want to bring in before I go in that direction is the third piece of our triad topic today is those narcissists and how they also, as physical energy vampires, right? Also drain our energy, manipulate our moods, and alter our thought patterns and belief systems in very toxic and profound ways. And I know that both of us have had experiences in the narcissist realm. It's so interesting because I've been wanting to take classes with Jerry Sargent, you mentioned, of Star Magic. I've read his book and I have seen his videos, and I absolutely love his philosophies in so many ways. And I would say that I also adhere to, and I probably picked it up from John Newton, another one of our mentors that we both like, to keep it simple. And so the whole categorization, as you mentioned, is, I think, mind distraction, and it keeps people from just doing the work and getting all wrapped up in is it an ET entity, or is it a demon, or is it a this, or is it a that? It doesn't matter to me. And I have that beautiful non-ability of clairvoyance not being my top intuition, so I don't see it. So I don't really know the difference. I just feel that there's something going on there that doesn't need to be there, and that is sucking the energy of a client. I'd say in some interesting aspects of my entity work and demon work are the contracts that the soul can make with these demons and entities, energetic parasites, that they may not be aware of. I literally had a guy on my table. He came to me because I had mentioned doing demon work. He was very embedded in his religion, in a very open-minded way. And when we started to go into the clearing work, where I felt like somewhere in his past life experience, he knowingly or unknowingly made a contract with dark energies, some kind of demonic force. As I out loud started to verbally guide him to clearing this contract, which is required before releasing an entity. And if you have trouble getting an entity to detach or go away, there's probably a contract that needs to be cleared. He said, wait, whoa. You mean to tell me that I may have contracted with this entity to give me my strength and power, and that's why I have to kind of keep my violence in check? Was sort of literally what his thing was. And I said, yeah, wouldn't it be great if you were free of that and you could just be all of you and expand into your own potency? And he goes, no, I'll keep it. Thank you. And he paid me and he left. And that was the end of it. And I follow him on Facebook and he seems to be doing fine. But that is part of his experience, that he is still comfortable with knowing that this entity is bringing him into spaces where he's got to really keep his temper and some level of violence in check. He didn't really tell me what that was about. I know he does barehanded boxing. I know he's married with children. They seem to be happily married. I don't know where his violence or anger bleeds into, but he decided to keep it. Very interesting.
Yep. And that is their choice. And thank you for honoring his choice. And that's where it's not our decision when it comes to dealing with these things. It has to be mutual. And that's why the contract breaking, that's why the client has to be involved in breaking the contract. And I know that you will find, when you go through the Star Magic stuff and Jerry's methods, that it is a mutual experience between client and practitioner, and that the client must release the contracts, and there's a process for that, in order to really do the deep energetic parasite cleanse. There's some of it that you can do without their direct involvement, but it is very, very much the same as what you're describing. I know. So I've experienced some things, and maybe that's where I became a little uncomfortable with it. Drawing up the strength in myself to know that, I'm coming from a certain place. I'm not coming from fear, and I am able to see this parasite for what it is and offer it love. In the instances that I've done it, it's much like when I work with certain disturbances in the body. I'll just call them disturbances, pain points, whatever, where there is stuck energy or stuck memories, and we'll key in on it. And when I'm able to offer that level of love, and it's a very nurturing, motherly, divine mother sort of love that is just like blasted into this area. Blasted is probably not the best term, but offer, and it tends to melt. And Jerry has some methods as well, where he has some specific codes where if you encounter something that doesn't want to let go, it is much like that. And I think he calls it like an entity opiate of some sort, where you inject it and they just kind of they just relax, and then you can lift them up and out, and then you're not fighting anything, right? He has a lot of really pretty brilliant techniques that are very effective. And so I think that I had mentioned something like that, and I could swear that you mentioned something along those lines, that you used a technique like that every now and then, that you found it to be effective. But maybe I'm not remembering things properly. That's possible.
Yeah. I guess my point of view is more of neutral.
Yeah.
Really not fear and not love, but
Okay.
just from a viewpoint of the person and the entity may have a agreement, and the entity needs to be told that the agreement is now over and that they can go. And also from the viewpoint that, sometimes these entities get stuck and they don't even know that they have a choice to move on and do something else.
I have found that as well.
Yeah. So helping them to remember that they have a choice, or to understand that they have a choice, is another valuable tool that I have come across. Yeah.
I've also found that they it's almost like they're hired. There may be a few different levels. If you pick into it an awful lot, there may be different levels of why they're there. And somebody hired somebody, and they're acting as, and I really don't want to get into that, because that is more of the tracking and picking apart and getting into the details that really doesn't matter, and unless there's something that's like really, really sticky. But I feel like if you address the contractual issue and address what you're mentioning as far as discussing it with the client and having them release the contract, and then also having a discussion with the entities and letting them know that they are free to go, there's a level of relief there. And what has been your experience on the changes in people when they release some of these parasites? Now, these could be physical parasites, energetic parasites, or physical beings posing as narcissistic personality people. The effects are similar in my experience. Can you share some of the benefits that you have seen on what it's like on the other side of it when you start to get rid of some of these things?
Well, there's obviously, well, not obviously, but there is definitely an experience of a lightness, a freedom. The flip side is that a lot of people will experience a loss, a loneliness, an emptiness. Many people who may have had the entity or being or narcissist or worms, whatever it is, for so long that when it's released or dispelled or gotten rid of, it almost feels like there's something missing. And from an energetic viewpoint, if we're talking about entities, the person has the capability to pull it back in. I try to warn my clients that that's a possibility, and to try to sit with the emptiness and the space. And obviously with a narcissist, it's a little bit more emotionally challenging, because there is often that need for the love bombing, the quote unquote love connection, that makes it hard to disengage or not go back, kind of thing.
I think there can be a chemical reaction, addictive neurochemicals that are released, that with physical parasites, energetic parasites, and definitely with narcissists. Narcissists are, probably the biggest example of that, where they will, establish an addictive response.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's something to be mindful of in working with people with this stuff.
Yeah. So typically what I have found is, if the client in question has one of those things going on, they probably have two or all three going on. And so I have found it to be very important to be mindful to address the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, the energetic, all of the pieces, and at least suggest to them that they do parasite cleanses if they're in a narcissistic relationship and I've just pulled an entity off of them.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would say most of them don't listen to, you should do a parasite cleanse, until they've come back to me 2 or 3 times with the same problem. I don't know what your experience has been with that, but
similar. Yeah. And I let them know that's your choice and how you deal with this. And you ought to be mindful, because you on some level invited this thing in. Here's you lined up with it somehow, right? Often enough, it's something where they were experiencing something a little bit rocky in childhood, and they invited it in as a friend, and it came in initially as posing as a friend, and then became a problem, because they really didn't need each other anymore in the way that they thought that they might, right? So the relationship changed, and it's much like having relationships, friendships, whatever, that have expired, and we are not ready to let them go. Things need to get a little painful before we're actually ready to let them go. So that's my understanding of why people invite them back in, and why they tend to struggle with it and don't listen. And I know that we can't take that personally. It can be a little bit frustrating when you feel like you're doing the work over and over again. And at some point you have to say, I'm not, listen, this is your gig. This is your life. I can't live it for you. And I'm getting a little tired of pulling this thing out. Right. If you're not do you really want it gone or not? Let's talk about that. Yeah. Right. Do you really I understand that life is different, and you need to do things a little bit differently. Sometimes comfort, even if it's painful, is less scary than change. So I do a lot of coaching around how do we embrace the change of how things are going to feel different when we're not dealing every day with these things. where we may experience that sense of loneliness, and then, we do some grief work around that. There's a lot of different reactions. More often than not, though, once people are able to finally get on the other side of that fairly consistently, they find that they are more clear-headed, that they feel like they are making more of their own decisions and not in like programmed loops as often. They feel more of a general sense of lightness more often than not, or that it's easier to get out of the heaviness. A lot of them feel like they are opening their eyes for the first time ever, or the first time in a long time, and they are seeing things differently. They find that happy synchronicities are happening more and more and more. And that life in general has more space for other connections to be made, other more supportive connections that are not parasitic connections. So the connections with other humans in their lives tend to be more supportive rather than parasitic or codependent or unhealthy in some way. Their relationship with themselves is improved. And their life in general is improved once they consistently get used to then living life without the constant influence of these parasitic beings, however it is that they're showing up. So it's definitely a lesson, but that's been my experience. But in the middle of that, before you're on the other side of it, you can go through the experience of like a parasitic die-off when you're actually, taking strides toward clearing your body of physical parasites. You can feel kind of yucky for a while as things are dying off and you're moving toward the other side of that. You can, it's like quitting coffee. The first few days, is really, you have headaches and stuff, and then, and then you start to feel better. It's like any detox that we do, right? That it's expected that you feel kind of yucky for a little bit. It can definitely be a little bit longer when it is energetic parasites, and even longer than that when you're dealing with recovering from a narcissistic relationship. So, but I agree that if somebody has one, they likely have all of them.
Yeah. So I think what I'd like to share quickly, and I don't know if it would be useful to have a list in the dialogue box under the video, the symptoms of having physical parasites, I think, is important to at least acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Insomnia is a really big red flag. Moodiness, even if you are a woman, it doesn't mean that it's normal. The mood swings are pretty intense with parasites. Uncontrollable cravings.
Mm-hmm.
It can be alcohol, gluten, sugars, various forms of let's say unhealthy sugar types of things is very popular with the physical parasites. Not all people, but many will have a lot of acne that shows up, and weight issues, constipation, and or diarrhea. And I think a lot of intestinal issues, I'm not a doctor and I don't claim to be one, but my personal experience is that a lot of intestinal issues, IBS, Crohn's, SIBO, these are actually parasites. And I talked to a naturopath, one of them that helped me with my parasitic load, when I finally realized that it was not menopause, as the doctors told me, and it was actually parasites. He said that there's not just parasites that are worms in the body, but some of them are amoebic. And even when we have our intuition confirmed, it's just like so interesting, because I had been saying to myself that I felt like I had some kind of amoebic parasite. And then he confirmed that there was an amoebic parasite. And I was like, okay, this is crazy, because how did I know that? And it took a different kind of antiparasitic medication to clear that particular type.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So, can you think of any other symptoms that might show up if you have a physical parasite in particular?
I'm thinking more of the energetic parasites, but I think it would show up as with the physical parasites as well. I feel like it can show up as a spiritual psychosis.
Explain what you mean by that.
How exactly do I mean that? How far do I want to go down this rabbit hole? Where people believe that they are seeing things that they're not actually seeing, and there's a fine line there, because we know that the truth is stranger than fiction as far as what reality seems to look like. But there comes a point where people experience things that don't allow them to function in this planet. And they feel completely debilitated, unable to function, unable to get out of bed, unable to be out in public, unable to relate to other people, unable to function as a human being, right?
You sound like those special empaths.
Yes. And it's hard to differentiate, right? Because it could all be part of the same thing. It could be part of a Kundalini awakening. It could be part of a dark night of the soul. It could be, so many different things. But I feel like when your awakening symptoms or your symptoms in general of anything leave you in a position where you are not able to function as a human being, not able to relate to other humans at all, not able to go out in public, not able to get out of bed, I would think that if we're in a healthier state of mind, we would want to function. We would want to get out of bed. I'm not saying we can't have rest, but if you find that you have not been able to function for weeks or months, that's kind of an emergency situation that really ought to be tended to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, totally.
So I can see, parasites have definitely had an effect in situations like this. And more so in the meaning that people tend to make out of these sort of debilitating type situations. I can't do this because X, Y, and Z. I'm being haunted by demons. I can't sleep because I constantly have ETs in my room that are keeping me awake all the time. That may or may not be true, but do you know what I'm saying? We've all had our experiences, but if something like this is going on for weeks or months, or you feel victimized by your circumstances, by your physical health, by whatever it is that is going on in your life, it's that general frequency of feeling victimized, the victimization of I can't because, right? That's the general frequency when I know something is spinning and something is not acting favorably on your system.
Yeah, that victimization is really key, because I feel that victimization is the polar opposite and the magnetization of what attracts the narcissist, which is really interesting because when I first came to understand what a narcissist was, I was in probably my 6th narcissist relationship. I just thought I had to keep trying to find a nice guy. I didn't get it. until I finally educated myself. And what I came to understand was I thought I was being a nice person. And I thought that I was trying to be loving. And I thought that I was trying to be a good girlfriend. And really what I was being was a victimized doormat. And when we see, this was really common in 2012, the narcissist empath dance. Why are they attracted to each other? Why is the empath so susceptible to the narcissist game? I'm like, well, because the empath has their own wounding that the narcissist is picking up on and taking advantage of.
Yeah.
And it's been so interesting to see that play out in individuals and, oh, look, in society as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Well, it's the, wanting to, it's your fault, blah, 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 that I am feeling this way. Well, it's a dynamic. We line up.
Yeah.
As you said, you didn't start to educate yourself until you were in your, sixth narcissistic relationship. I will raise my hand and say that I have been a slow learner in some cases, right? To wake up to things like, I'll beat on myself. Why is it taking you this long to learn? And the message that I get on the other side of these relationships is always, I love you and I love myself more.
Yes.
And how long does it take us to get to that point to say, I love you and I love myself more? It's not a but. You can still love this individual or love who you believe them to be. And with an understanding that you are loving something of your own creation that is a shell that they have created, because there is no real core. And it's sad that they didn't have the mirroring that they needed as a child, and that's kind of what sets individuals up to exhibit narcissistic personality disorder. And so really there is nothing there for them inside. Everything is what has been acquired outside of them. So they don't love you, they love the way that you make them feel. And so it is very parasitic. It does take your energy. And some of them are absolutely brilliant and calculated in the way that they move forward with things. And I believe that many of them do not know what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Absolutely.
And I feel like in dealing with some of the energetic parasites, at least, they don't really sometimes know what they're doing either. Some of them tend to be a little bit more calculated, and others are just kind of pawns. That's just what they are. It's just what they do. They're just feeding. I guess that's why I love that you approach it with a level of neutrality, because many of them don't overtly mean harm. They just don't know any better. They're just eating.
Right.
That's all they're doing. So of course they elicit these, feelings of fear and scarcity and loneliness and these things that need, different addictions and whatever. It's kind of the same frequency. They're just trying to get their energetic needs met.
Mm-hmm.
They're literally eating. That is their food.
Yeah. So what can we share as remedies? I mean,
Wormwood and black walnut hull tincture is my number one recommendation. There are also a lot of different things, different tinctures and stuff that are on the market. I don't want to necessarily point at any specific brand. I can point at some that I prefer.
Yeah.
That's number one for the physical parasite cleanse. Also getting on top of Candida is good. I definitely would not steer people away from getting consultations with a naturopathic doctor to really analyze what sort of parasites they're dealing with. I think that would, I would feel like I am not in integrity if I were, here, take this, and this. I don't have a doctorate. I'm not able to prescribe. So that's not my gig. If you want to see a naturopath and actually be examined for that, or if you want to use your own intuition and what it is that you do for your own self, then have at it. I can just say in general, I use black walnut whole wormwood tincture.
Awesome. Yes, that is definitely at the top of my list. And I'm curious what you use for candida. Is there something different?
I use it does have a combination of herbs. I don't have the bottle with me right now, but it's just stuff that I've been using for years, called Botrol, and it tends to be really good at a wide range of parasites and candida and starting to wipe it out. But you also have to be willing to change your diet and not be consuming sugar, because candida loves sugar. So taking a look at your intake, like you were talking about the gluten, sugar, alcohol. Yeah, all of that is definitely part of it. And sugar is more addictive even than heroin, I believe they say, right? And so we can definitely see the effects of it when people have that out of control. I really don't have much of a sweet tooth usually, and don't consume a lot of processed sugar anyway. But I can tell when I'm out of balance when I get those cravings.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of sugar sweets, but I do like my breads and like my glasses of wines.
Yeah.
I admit, and I can tell when I've had more than I should, because it sets my whole biome off, body chemistry. So some of the things that I have used, because I got to the point where I was taking so much of the black walnut whole wormwood tincture that I had to shake it up.
Yes.
I am a huge fan of oregano oil.
I love oregano oil. Good one.
I've tried a lot of brands, and all I can say is that I personally will buy a high grade oregano oil and put drops into a gel cap.
Nice.
And make my own, because I have found the pre-made gel caps to be too weak to do anything. I had a friend who has severe SIBO, which is a small intestine bacterial overgrowth, something or other in the wrong part of the body. And he has said that in his SIBO Facebook group, a lot of people use oregano oil to offset that issue. I love oregano oil. I also use clove and clove oil, or a clove blend that I get through doTERRA called On Guard. I really love On Guard.
Oh, there are people who swear by On Guard. I've heard a lot of people mention that.
Yeah, I use On Guard mouthwash, On Guard toothpaste. I love On Guard, which is probably why I'm a little bit sick, because I took some this morning and now I feel a little wonky, which means I have to do a full-on parasite cleanse. Obviously, it's time again. It's been a while.
Yeah, you've definitely had some stuff going on, and I could feel that you're experiencing the die-off or the symptoms of them wanting to live, right? Yeah. Somebody said something I saw the other day, kids who will get the bumps on the back of their arms. I thought that was just like a gluten thing, but somebody was saying that is a definite sign of a parasitic load. It's, the response of worm poop. I definitely had that. My daughter has had it. And so, yeah, we're definitely going to focus on some more of, the parasite cleanses. Some people get pretty extreme about their parasite cleanses. So that's where I
don't know what you're talking about.
Since we're not on video, Ariana was raising her hand, and we're so used to being on video, and at some point we will get to the point here soon where we will show our faces on video while we talk, because it's definitely a lot more animated than just hearing the audio, and we're just not quite there yet, but we'll be heading in that direction. But yeah. So I have found that I really don't like feeling too sick, right? So I kind of take it a little easy on myself, especially if I know I need to leave the house, because some of these cleanses can be super intense, and you can feel pretty sick for a little while. Some flu-like symptoms for sure.
Very fluey. It feels very fluey, and it can feel worse than that. But I feel it. I feel it in my throat. And I feel a little achy. And I was fine this morning before I took that On Guard capsule. So yeah,
that's a pretty typical response too.
Yeah,
for sure. Have you found that when you're pretty clear most of the time and doing your regular parasitic cleanses, and by the way, I do want to say that, I mean, you were talking about having an overload of the wormwood black walnut hull. This is not something kind of like, colloidal silver or anything else along these lines. There are certain things that they're not meant to be taken every day. This is not a prescription. This is not, a pharmaceutical. You want to be mindful, and, if you feel that you need to be under the care of a professional for this stuff, then be under the care of a professional for this stuff, right?
Good luck finding a professional that will believe in parasites. Allopathy. The traditional medical doctors, it's a little bit harder to find someone. You really have to find someone who's willing to address parasites. Which is unfortunate, but it's true. So you would have to either find a holistic doctor or a naturopath
or a chiropractor.
Literally a doctor who specializes in parasites. And there are some in the United States. They're just not necessarily American, because American doctors don't believe in parasites. They don't exist in America, is what I've been told.
Wow, that's super fancy and amazing. I would beg to differ, but yeah, that is hysterical.
Before we move off of the topic of some of the things that we use, I do want to share sort of my game changer for me. So I was taking the green black walnut hull and wormwood blend, and I did not feel like it was making the impact that I needed. And then somebody told me to use a binder it's an herb called Mimosa pudica.
I was just going to mention that.
Yay!
It's wonderful. Thank you for mentioning that, because yes, it is super helpful. So if you add that in, it can be very, very effective for your detox efforts.
Yeah. So when I first found the naturopath that helped me, I was experiencing what felt like my spleen wanting to explode out of my stomach. Yay. It was really awesome. And so I was Googling it because the doctors told me all my tests came back normal, and that I was in menopause and I was crazy. Yay. So what I discovered is when I added the Mimosa pudica, which actually acts like a glue and grabs little wormy guys and rips them out and pulls them through your intestines so that they can't escape. And then you get to, poop them out. Yay. I could feel them being ripped out of my spleen.
Wow.
I could literally feel them being ripped out of my spleen. I would like double over and just be like, oh my God, what just happened? And then, a couple hours later, I'd go to the bathroom, and then I would feel, as we've talked about, that loss of the entity. I would feel like my whole body needed to readjust, and I would have to go lay down. That's how intense it was for me.
Yes.
So it's not comfortable expelling the parasites, but it's better than letting them suck you dry. And the response, the negative response of some of these die off The die-off response is called Herxheimer. It's a Herxheimer response, and that's something that people can Google to see all the symptoms of what that is about. But it is commonly known that the die-off can make you feel very sick, sometimes upset stomach, sometimes really queasy, sometimes just feel like the flu. But it's important to know that during die-off, it can be uncomfortable. However, on the other side of it, you have a boost of energy, you feel more clarity. As Cami said, you start to feel like you can think for yourself and be yourself again, which is incredible.
I am so glad that you mentioned that part of it on the other side of it, because I feel like it's important to mention that humans, as a rule, will tend to stay in a really uncomfortable, familiar situation rather than approaching something that is actually better and way, way happier, right? Because the happier is unknown or uncomfortable. They really don't know what to expect on the other side, right? All I know is, and this happens sometimes with, healing and entity work, and it happens with extricating yourself from narcissistic relationships, and it happens with doing parasite cleanses. You might feel shitty for a little bit. You might feel shitty for a long while, and I nobody's going to sugarcoat that and say that it feels great. On the other side of it, though, you will be so grateful to have at least opened yourself up to a different experience, to know what's possible. If you choose to invite the narcissist back, if you choose to invite the energetic parasites back, if you choose to invite the physical parasites back into your system, you will know that you just don't feel very good. And there is a fear there, and I understand that, of going through something that is really, really, really uncomfortable for the promise of something unknown but better on the other side of it. I just hold for people that they allow themselves to experience really what's on the other side of it, so they have a taste at least of what's possible, to own their own system, own their own decisions, not feel victimized by whatever, and to open up to the potential of other experiences that are far more supportive.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to share this. So when I first discovered the word narcissist in my reality, and realized that the relationship that somehow I was smart enough to get out of, but was dealing with all of the detoxing responses, I found some group online for narcissist recovery, and all these women were posting before and after pictures. Here's a picture of me when I'm with my narcissist, and they look like they're a drug addict or something. And then here's me 1 month after he was gone, and they look great and gorgeous and sexy. And I'm like, I gained weight when I got rid of him. I looked crappier I felt crappier. And it was this huge battle for me. My adrenal glands were shutting down because of the damage. And obviously I had parasites that I didn't know I had at that point in time that were still drawing on my energy. And it was a long journey of trying to feel better and look better and feel better about me. And I have to say, I was a little bit upset that I didn't have that gorgeous transformation 1 month or 2 months after getting rid of the narcissist in my life. It didn't.
Oh, yeah, that's like any grieving process, right? There is no timeline that we can put on it. It's all an individual experience, and results may vary, right? Yeah, I hate to say this, but it could take years to recover, depending on how much of yourself has been sucked away, how much of your power you have given away. It's a process. It is step by step. There is no overnight magic pill that I'm aware of. Having support is really, really helpful. However, you find that support. Again, we have the various groups that we can align with on social media. There are so many of them available. I believe her name is Melanie Tonia Evans, I think is probably the one that I would point to for narcissistic abuse recovery. Her programs, her free YouTube content of all of the people, and there are a lot of them offering support. Find who you align with. I just know that she is hugely successful, and more often than not, I hear people mention her. I have found her so helpful, and thousands and thousands of others have as well. But again, there are a lot of very supportive people out there. You just need to educate yourself on all of this stuff. Find your own information. Find what aligns with you.
Yes, absolutely. I kind of want to go back to when you were talking about the spiritual psychosis. You mentioned when someone is sort of convinced that they're being haunted, or there's demons around or ETs around that may or may not actually be there. That brings up a situation that I'm recalling, and this gentleman is still years later not doing a parasite cleanse, and he has some severe physical issues, severe medical issues, severe psychological issues.
I'm getting heavy metal as well as parasites with him.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a really good point. Heavy metals and parasites go hand in hand. So if you do find yourself doing a parasite cleanse, you are going to need to very likely address heavy metals. And I was really disturbed to discover that heavy metals are passed from mother to fetus in the womb. So
I wasn't.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I wasn't directly aware of that, but it doesn't surprise me. So there are studies showing that the heavy metals can pass down. Okay, just like ancestral hoo-ha and whatever, we have all of it.
Parasites also, but that was really disturbing for me to discover, because here I know that I'm battling the metals that are in the air, in the water, in the food. I won't get too technical because we don't want to be censored on YouTube, but
correct.
They're everywhere. And so odds are you have them, and a lot of heavy metals, and that it's a really good thing to look into those types of cleanses also, because the parasites feed off of the heavy metals. I don't understand.
I'm not sure exactly how that works, but I believe that to be the case. It seems that they tend to line up together, and also not just diagnosed mental illness, but also neurological disorders often respond very, very well to heavy metal cleanse.
Yes. And there's some great information on that in the Medical Medium books. I believe he has a website, medicalmedium.com. Among his books, there are stories of people reversing autism. Heavy metal cleanses.
Yep.
I forgot what I was saying though. Where were we?
What else I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just trying to track back to where we started.
Oh, you had wanted to talk about, but I don't know that you finished your discussion about the spiritual psychosis with people who believe in themselves to be haunted. Do you feel like you wrapped that up? That you recognize that one of your examples has still yet to this day to do a cleanse?
I think what's important to share with that is that there is a partner in that relationship who is enabling as well as being the victim of. And so just for the listeners out there, perhaps there is someone that you know where you're like, oh, but he needs me, and oh, he's got all these illnesses, and oh, is he doing the work to get better, and who's paying for it?
I have a grimace on my face. I have a grimace on my face because I know that I have experienced this personally through, with myself and with friends who have found themselves in situations like that. And covert narcissists are very good at playing that game. It's a form of attention, and whether it is a conscious thing or not, again, I don't like to point at somebody and say they know that they're doing this, right? Because I think we all experience levels of this where we have a situation that doesn't seem to improve, and we need to be maybe called out or be very honest with ourselves as far as where is the secondary gain for us not getting better? What are we getting out of this? Even if it's attention, what are we getting out of this? In a situation like you described, the individual that's in that situation feels needed, and that's what they're getting out of it. So the need to feel needed is stronger than the need to feel empowered.
And going back to something that you mentioned earlier, it's also about that fear of change. Why do women, not just women, I've actually known men that have been in physically abusive relationships, but why do women stay in physically abusive relationships? Because there's a multitude of reasons, but they don't know how to leave. They're afraid to leave. It's the only way he shows me he loves me. He doesn't mean it, whatever excuses that they buy. And with the parasitic psychosis, whether it's physical parasites, demonic parasites, all of the above, that's another piece of it too. And as the partner of someone like that, one needs to say, is my partner really serving our relationship?
Or are they just consuming all of my attention and energy?
And resources.
Absolutely, resources.
Right?
Yes. I think I got the t-shirt. Been there, done there, got the t-shirt.
Yeah, I have 3. No, I'm just kidding. That'll make me cry. It's okay. Some of us are really stubborn, and it takes a few turns around the mobile to figure it out. But that's okay.
Well, the way I look at it is you're deeply learning these lessons so that you're able to share them with other people. And right, you can really, really get it, because I've been there, right? I've experienced that. You can say that without a doubt. You have absolutely experienced your fair share. I will also say that there are some really real conditions, such as Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
That gets people stuck in those situations.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So recognizing that it is an addiction, it's just like any other addiction. If you admit it to yourself, you don't have to admit it to anybody else, but if you admit it to yourself and you're honest with yourself and recognizing that it is an addiction, it enables you to see things a little bit more clearly and open up to the possibility of having a different experience.
Yeah.
Toxic, abusive relationships are addictive. They form a physical addiction with the dopamine hits, with the breadcrumbs that we get in the positive experiences that we have in those relationships, and it intensifies. We go after that hit. We've got to have that hit. It's an addictive dynamic. And I think if we admit that to ourselves, it's a lot easier to extricate ourselves and not go around the mulberry bush and keep trying to chase it and figure out why we're doing this or whatever. If we recognize there's an addictive pattern, there are addictive chemicals running through our system, and we just have to take one step after another in order to find some relief from that it's running our lives, and there's other things that we can do.
Yeah. And, to continue to address the partner of the, sick person, if you're either on either side, if you are the one that is under attack, or if you are the one trying to fix the person under attack, either way, there are childhood deficiencies whether you want to call it trauma, whether you want to call it lack of the love that was needed, worthiness, acceptance. I can't think of a case where there isn't something in the childhood that needs to be addressed, whether through reparenting processes, shadow work, energy work, working with some kind of therapist, healer, EMDR. It doesn't even matter. There's a million ways up the mountain, but just start working on that stuff, because that will unravel everything.
I absolutely agree. There's somebody that I started to find on YouTube. She goes by, her channel is Crappy Childhood Fairy. And I started watching some of her videos, and she has a lot to share. So that's another resource. But yeah, I would absolutely agree. I don't think I have encountered one instance where that is not the case. Now, have you also ever met anybody who has gotten out of childhood unscathed? I haven't.
Well, no, I guess not. Even the ones that fill out my little intake sheet and it says no, everything's fine, and my parents were great. Once I get them on the table, we uncover
all kinds of stuff.
Something's there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we all have our experiences, and some of us have experiences that hit us a little bit, maybe more deeply than others, but it's really hard to compare traumas. But significant traumas, they leave a mark in the brain, they affect the brain. And there are plenty of studies out there that show that adverse childhood trauma contributes to heart disease, diabetes, a wide range of medical issues, depression, anxiety, all sorts of things down the line. So I don't... All I can say is I feel for people who have had adverse childhood experiences. I feel like, man, it's really hard to compare, right? Because I've definitely met some people where, like you said, they claim to have had the perfect childhood, but then they'll share some experiences with you that hit them so deeply because they hadn't had such a rash of trials and excuses to up level and initiations, right? Where, like, if you're hit over and over and over with certain things, you develop some level of resilience, unless or until it is something that completely takes you out at the knees.
Also, people who think that they had a good childhood and it's a matter of they've suppressed much. And when we get them into, the hypnotic brainwave theta state or whatever, when we're really able to uncover that, they're like, oh my God, I didn't know that thing that happened when I was 5 really bothered me that much, but I'm bawling on your table now.
Right.
So there's a lot of little tricky nuances to it that they've either hidden it from themselves, or they've convinced themselves it wasn't that bad, or they don't want to remember, or they think it's like me with my narcissistic love relationships. I just thought that was reasonably normal, and that's just how you keep carrying on until you find one that works. And really, it was my own childhood trauma of not receiving the nurturing and value and love and acceptance that creates a healthy sense of self, which in turn creates healthy boundaries with others that I had no ability to discern at that point in time.
I feel like most of us go through life not even knowing that there is anything wrong or different about our childhoods, because that's all we know. That's all we experience, right? So until we compare those experiences with others, we don't even know that there is something that might be unhealthy about the way that we were brought up. And again, it is very, very hard to compare, because I've definitely had plenty of people who don't come in laying out their list of traumas that they've had and chaotic and wild childhood experiences that you're like, how did you freaking survive, right? Other people that seem to have had an idyllic childhood where things hit them really deeply. So it's hard to compare, right? It's everybody has their own individual experience, and all I can say is that we don't know what's possible until we open up to that and allow it into our lives. If we expect more of the same over and over and over and over again, then we're not opening up to the wide variety of experiences, the good stuff that is available to experience in this world.
Amen to that. Yes. I love it. So there is recovery beyond the narcissistic relationship.
Absolutely.
There is recovery beyond being a host to energetic vampires or entities or energetic demons. And there is recovery beyond physical parasites. The first step in any form of recovery is to acknowledge and admit that something's not right. Something is amiss, and to start seeking help and allowing that help to come in. And I think sometimes for many of us that have had traumatic childhoods or tumultuous experiences in our childhood, one of the hardest parts is to let go of the reins and stop for a moment, a little bit, just crack open a little bit of the control that we have felt we have had to be the one to take care of ourselves and the one to do everything. And we can't trust someone else to help because we've been let down and disappointed so many times. And look at, and being willing to receive help, asking spirit to guide you, looking on YouTube, exploring Cami and myself's websites to see if anything pings there for you. But allowing help to come in is key. And it's not easy. I admit that myself.
Yeah, no, it is one of the hardest things, especially as we've been taught to give, and be in control of everything. And I know that a hyper independence is often a traumatic response, they say. Humans are a communal species. So when you find someone who has rejected humanity, it's because they've been hurt. If you find someone who isolates, it's because they've been hurt. If you find someone who really does not enjoy other human beings, it's because they've been hurt, right? So we understand that reticence to reach out for help. And also when one is under the effects of what might be diagnosed as depression and anxiety, you're not able to see the love all around you. You're not able to see the support that is all around you. You're not able to see people reaching out. You reject the help that is right there. You can't see it because you feel so unworthy and ashamed and whatever other loops it is that you're running through. And that's one thing that I hope that people will be willing to explore in looking at least the physical parasite aspect of things and trying to clean some things up so that they can see more clearly, so that they can start to lift out of the depression symptoms and what have you, and see the help that is right there available to them, and whatever other approaches it is that they feel that they need to take, at least lighten the load enough so that you can get a glimpse and come up for air.
Yeah.
And see a little bit that there are so many people who are out there, and rather than expecting somebody at your back constantly to attack you. That's a PTSD response, by the way, of always expecting the other shoe to drop, of always expecting somebody to be after you. To see that life can be experienced in a different way, that you can look and see how people, the world, the universe can be conspiring in your favor. That can be a reality to experience. That is available. And some people don't have the slightest clue what that even feels like. And so I hold for people that they open up to the possibility that these types of experiences can be had. no matter what your background is, no matter what has happened. All of that can be used as a level up and an outgrowing to experience something new, something better, something more pleasant, even something joyful.
Yes. Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
There was a thought that was fleeting through that I wanted to tag on to that. Yes, I think it's really important that you shared that the physical aspect, I feel, is probably one of the most important ones to address, and the one I feel people are least likely to do, because not only when you do a parasite cleanse and begin to get to the other side of the herxing and start to feel better on the other side of the yucky part of it, you not only get more clarity in the mind and more levelness of the emotional swings, but you also start to gain in more physical strength, more confidence with that physical strength. And obviously better sleep is going to give you not only more clarity, but more centeredness. It's focused in the solar plexus chakra, which is interesting since that is connected with the gut and the stomach, and that solar plexus chakra is connected to your Christ consciousness, your confidence levels, your self-esteem. So when you have the gut cleaned up, those positive aspects gain strength within your persona, within your body, within your spirit. And I think it's really important to be able to stand up against the narcissist or stand up against the non-physical entity parasites. So the physical place to me is the most important area to start with.
I love that. Thank you. Yes. I believe helps to clear the mind enough so that we can start to consider other things. And at the very least, you're giving yourself a leg up, right? Yeah. And so that you can start to feel a little bit better, because it's hard to work on your spiritual practices. It's hard to be in a space of empowerment in your relationships with others when your physical body feels crappy and when your mind doesn't work properly, right? So anything that we can do to get into a better position that way, so that we're feeling better in our bodies, better in our minds, that we are then able to deal with everything differently.
Absolutely. So, friends, thank you for listening. And I feel like if anyone has any questions, to put those in the comments or the chat section, and we would be thrilled to assist and offer any more of our experience, strength, and hope with our personal stories with narcissists, with physical parasites, and with energetic parasites.
Absolutely. Ariana, thank you. As always, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, Cammie, I love you. Thank you so much.
I love you. We'll see you next week, guys.
Yay! Thank you for joining us on this episode of Conscious Conversations. We hope that the insights and wisdom shared here have resonated with you and sparked new pathways of growth and transformation.
We value your presence and engagement, and we invite you to be an active part of our conscious community. Your comments, questions, and shares contribute to the collective expansion of knowledge and awareness.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave a comment or share it with someone who might benefit from these transformative conversations. Together, we can create ripples of positive change.
We also offer personalized sessions and resources to support you on your journey of personal growth and spiritual healing. Visit our websites listed in the comments section to explore the various energetic healing modalities and sessions we provide.
Remember, conscious growth is a continuous journey, and we're honored to walk this path with you. Subscribe to our podcast to stay connected and never miss an episode as we explore new dimensions of consciousness and elevate the collective vibration.
Join us next time for another enlightening episode of Conscious Conversations. Until then, keep expanding your mind and embracing the infinite possibilities that lie within.